Hello everyone, welcome to the class once again. I hope you're all doing good and in the best of your health. So in the last class we were talking about the first 5 questions of system of particles and rotational motion. We saw different questions based upon the rotational motion concept. In this class we'll continue from where we left in the last class and we'll start from question number 6. Let's go to the question number 6 of this chapter, system of particles and rotational motion. Question number 6, a thin uniform circular disc of mass capital M and radius capital R is rotating in a horizontal plane about an axis passing through its center and perpendicular to its plane with an angular velocity omega. Another disk of same dimension but of mass m by 4. So we have got first point, it has got a different mass m by 4 is placed gently on the first disk coaxially. That means that the axis of both the disks are the same. That means they have a common axis. The angular velocity of the system now is a 1 by 3 omega, b 2 by 3 omega, c 4 by 5 omega and d 3 by 4 omega. The given scenario is in such a way that there's initially a disk which is rotating in the horizontal plane about an axis. It's a very simple thing to imagine and you can draw the figure very easily. The scenario is somewhat like this. As I'm going to draw the picture, this is a disk and the axis about which it can actually revolve is this. This is the axis. It's revolving in the horizontal plane and with an angular velocity omega. This is the thing that has been provided to us. So read the first line, thin uniform circular disc of mass m and radius capital R. So it's given that its mass is capital M and its radius is capital R. This has been provided about the disk. Rotating in a horizontal plane about an axis passing through its center and perpendicular to its plane with angular velocity omega. Another disk of same dimension. Same dimension means it would be having the same thickness and same radius. This is what same dimension here implies to us. But of mass m by 4, that means it has got a reduced mass and its mass is different than the initial disk and its mass is m by 4. Let me keep here the new disk as per the given scenario. I hope that you can clearly identify from here that we have a disk which has got the same radius but different mass. The mass is given as, the radius is same, that is R. Don't think that I have kept at same different point, but the radius is same. It has got a different mass, that is m by 4 when you have kept the disk on the previous disk. Now you see that since it is gently kept, it is slowly kept on the earlier disk. That means you are not providing any external torque. If you are not providing any external torque, that means the angular momentum will remain conserved. So I am writing the first point. Initial angular momentum will be equal to I into omega, where I is the moment of inertia of the disk about this axis. We all know that the moment of inertia of a disk is half mr square. So initial, let me mark this as I initial, and this I initial will be 1 by 2 mr square. Now you see that a second disk is kept over it. Mass m by 4, radius same, that is R. So if I talk about the final moment of inertia of the combined system, combined two disks, if I talk about, then we will be having half mr square plus the moment of inertia of the second disk about the same axis, that will be half its mass m by 4 multiplied by square of its radius. So half m by 4 r whole square. This is what we have to use. Now you see that half mr square plus 1 by 8 mr square. We can easily add both the two. Half plus 1 by 8 mr square. This can be written as 4 by 8. This is 1 by 8, so we will be getting 5 by 8 mr square. That's very simple for us to reach for the formula with the combined moment of inertia of the two disks. Now you see that we have to find out what is the angular velocity of this combined system. As I said you, the angular momentum remains conserved. Angular momentum remains conserved, so we can conserve the angular momentum. So let me write the reason for it as disk is kept gently or slowly. As disk is kept slowly over the previous disk, we would be having no external torque. So torque external is equal to 0. Therefore, initial angular momentum will be equal to final angular momentum. This is what we can actually comment about the situation. Now you see, just put in this equation the values of the angular momentum. We'll be having initial angular momentum, that is I initial into omega is equal to I final into omega dash, and we have to find out the omega dash, that is the final angular momentum of the combined system. Initial value of moment of inertia, that is half mr square, that is what we have evaluated. Half mr square multiply with omega is equal to final moment of inertia, that is 5 by 8. We have already evaluated 5 by 8 mr square. Let's put here 5 by 8 mr square multiply with omega dash. Clearly, I believe that you would have understood now what to do. We have to only cancel out some common terms at both the ends. See that r square will be cancelled out. We will be having, this will go 4 times, so 4 by 5 omega dash will be equal to 4 by 5 omega. I believe that this would be clear to you all how to evaluate such kind of question. In NEET examinations, such questions can come, let me tell you. It's not too tough, it's not too easy. You have to only conserve the angular momentum in this case, and you can't reach to the result very easily. The final answer we are having, the final angular velocity that you can see, that is equal to 4 by 5 omega. Let's check the option. 4 by 5 omega, that's option number C. That's the right answer. Rest all options are incorrect. Now, although we have taken time to solve this, but let me tell you, if you practice, you can solve it very easily and with good speed. That will save your time on this. You need not to draw the diagram on the day for examination. You should have the thinking in your mind that you have to proceed in this way. You can actually save on time and you can answer it quickly. But the method will be this. I have elaborately explained each and every step. Hope you have understood it and hope you can apply and understand where to conserve the angular momentum. The next one. So we have done this, such kind of question, and there will be variety of question based upon conservation of angular momentum that can be asked in your examination. Let's go ahead with the next question of the day. Question number 7. A force F is applied at the top of a ring of mass capital M. So you can see that this is a ring. On its top you are applying a force F and radius r. Its mass is capital M, its radius is r, placed on a rough horizontal surface as shown in figure. So we have this rough horizontal surface. On this we can see that a ring is placed. Friction is sufficient to prevent slipping. You can see the friction is sufficient to prevent slipping. The frictional force acting on the ring is A, F by 2 towards right, B, F by 3 towards left, C, 2F by 3 towards right, D is 0. First of all, try to understand in the given situation, only 2 things are provided, or you can say 3 things. First of all, what kind of object it is. It's a ring. You cannot take it as a sphere, you cannot take it as a disk. It's a ring, and you know that how to know its moment of inertia about any axis. About an axis passing through its center and perpendicular to its plane, it's mr square. But we'll see about which axis we are going to use the moment of inertia. Now you see here, its mass is m, radius r. There is friction, and friction is sufficient to prevent slipping because the surface is rough. Now we need to check whether the surface is applying any force or not. If it's applying a force, then which value is actually sufficient to prevent slipping, or if it's not applying any force, so option will be D, that is 0. We need to check which option is the correct answer. So for it, in the given scenario, remember, this is the case of rotation also and linear motion also. See here how I'm going to explain. And it's a case of rolling motion because it's not slipping. And I have told you all about how to frame equations in the case of rolling motion. Surface, this is the ring as per the given scenario. And let me tell you, this is the force that you have applied here, force F. Mass m, radius r. This is the mass m, its radius is given as r. Now friction will be acting on the ground. Now we are not aware about the direction. in which direction it's acting, whether it's acting the forward direction, whether it's acting the backward direction. I have explained you in rolling motion about the direction of friction force. The direction of friction force can be any, you may start with any direction. Let me tell you, the result will take care. If you have taken the direction in the forward direction, that is in the right hand side direction, the answer will come to be positive, the friction force will come to be positive, and yes, whatever direction you have taken, that will be correct. If let's say you have taken direction of friction towards right, then if the answer comes to be negative, that means our direction is incorrect. The direction has to be opposite in the backward direction. For our convenience, what I am going to do, I am going to take friction force acting towards right hand side, and let me show you the direction of friction force as here. Hope that this diagram, its two lines are very close, and I believe that you can clearly identify that I am drawing friction force to be acting to be here with small f. Capital F for the external force, small f for the frictional force. Now you see here, let us say, let's take this point O, the point where this ring is touching the surface. Now first of all, let's say it is rolling, so that means it will be having a linear acceleration and it will be having also an angular acceleration. Let us say the angular acceleration is alpha and linear acceleration is given as a. For pure rolling, we all know that a should be equal to r alpha. We all know that for pure rolling, linear acceleration is equal to r into alpha. This is what we know. First thing, that's quite clear to us. Mass is m. Any body, if it has a linear acceleration, that means you can write it's a net force is equal to mass into acceleration. So let me write that F plus F is equal to mass into acceleration, equation number 2. Using Newton's second law of motion, we can write that F plus F is equal to mass into acceleration. Now since the body is rotating, try to understand, since the body is rotating, that means the net torque that it should be, there should be net torque acting on it. Now you see here, can we think that the body is rotating about this point? Can we think that, because this would be acting as the instantaneous axis of rotation? So if I take this point as the point about which the body is rotating, we will be having torque acting about this point will be F into 2R, or let me write down torque net is equal to I into alpha. So torque net will be equal to F into 2R is equal to I. Now I am talking about point O. Let me write here for clarity. Torque about point O. We are calculating torque about point O so that you may not get confused why we are writing in this way. We are talking about torque about point O, so that our variables used that will be less. So F into 2R, friction will not provide any torque about this point, that's quite obvious, will be equal to I. Now moment of inertia about this point O, that will be equal to mr square plus mr square, because about this axis we know that the axis passing through the center and perpendicular to the plane is mr square. So about this axis it will be mr square plus mr square, that's 2 mr square. So let me first of all clearly write that I about point O, that will be given as mr square plus mr square is equal to 2 mr square. Clearly we can write this. Now you can put the value of I as 2 mr square here. So you will be having F into 2R or 2FR is equal to 2 mr square into alpha. We can put in this way. So from here, what values you can actually make out? Clearly 1R and 1R will be cancelled out. So let me cancel out the value of 1R. Now from here, can we write the value of alpha as F upon mr? Value of alpha as F upon mr. So let me write here, value of alpha is equal to F upon mr. This is what we can write about, comment about alpha. Next thing you see here, if we put the value of A equals to R alpha. So A equals to R alpha, so A will come out to be R into alpha is equal to R into F by mr. This is what we are going to obtain, that is F by m. A equals to F by m. Let's go and put here A equals to F by m in equation number 2. So substituting this value A equals to F by m in equation number 2, we'll be having F plus small f is equal to mass into acceleration, that is F by m, that is equal to F. So if F plus F is equal to F plus F is equal to F, clearly you can cancel out the value of capital F. That means frictional force will turn out to be 0. This is what we are obtaining in the final relation, friction force is equal to 0. So stepwise we proceeded and we came to know that friction force doesn't have any value, it's 0 in this case. It's not acting, it's got no value. So don't get confused that it's F by 2 towards right, F by 3 towards left, 2F by 3 towards right. Don't get confused with the values provided. If you evaluate accordingly, if you go with the sequence of steps as provided, you'll get that friction is acting as 0. It's a very good question, and such question can be asked. The level of difficulty is moderate, can be asked in your NEET examination. I hope that it will enhance your understanding of this concept of how to use forces equation in the case of pure rolling motion. I believe that this has enhanced your understanding, and yes, after this session also do practice question based upon pure rolling. Pure rolling is such a case that can be asked in your examination. Not too tough question, but yes, such questions can be framed in your examination. Let us go ahead with the next question of the day. Question number 8. A particle undergoes uniform circular motion. Remember, uniform circular motion, this is the thing that has been provided. About which point on the plane of the circle will the angular momentum of the particle remain conserved? A, center of the circle, B, on the circumference of the circle, C, inside the circle, D, outside the circle. We need to talk about which point, see here, will the angular momentum of the particle remain conserved. First of all, the scenario is very simple. Particle is moving in a circular motion. Any particle is moving in a circular motion. This is what that has been provided to us. We all know that for any particle, any body, any point mass to move in a circular motion, the only force required is the centripetal force. And the centripetal force acts towards the center of the circle about which the particle is rotating. The center of the circle in this case will be this. The only force acting would be centripetal force. Let me write down here. So one thing is quite sure. If a force passes through a point, that means it is not going to provide any torque about that point. So torque of the centripetal force about the center will be 0. So let me write down torque about center of the circle will be 0. If no torque is acting about any point, that means you can go ahead, you can conserve the angular momentum about that point. That means angular momentum will remain conserved about this point. It will remain conserved. Quite obvious, quite easy for us to comment on this. I believe that you have got the answer which I have said indirectly. That means the angular momentum will remain conserved about the center of the circle, because for a body going in uniform circular motion, the only force acting is the centripetal force, and that will be acting towards the center. Since it passes through center, it will not provide any torque. If no torque acts on the body, quite obvious, as I have used in the 6th question also, angular momentum will remain conserved. So quite easy question, objective question and conceptual question, and I believe that you would have got to know what kind of questions do appear in your examination. All conceptual, getting into the detail of the chapter. Let's go to the question number 9. Ninth one, the moment of inertia of a uniform horizontal cylinder of mass m about an axis passing through its edge and perpendicular to the axis of the cylinder when its length is 6 times its radius r is 39 by 4 mr square, b 39 by 4 mr, c 49 by 4 mr, d 49 by 4 mr square. First of all, looking with the options, we all know that moment of inertia. You have to talk about moment of inertia. See, it's required the moment of inertia we need to find out. In the checking the answer with dimensional formula, we all can say that we can eliminate B and C because dimensionally it will be incorrect. A or D will be the right answer. Anyone can be right. We are not aware about it. So we are not going to take a chance. Now in a regular class, I have derived the moment of inertia of a uniform cylinder which has got some width also, some length also, some thickness also. We have derived it and we have reached onto a formula. If you remember in our regular session, if you have watched, if you're remembering all the formulae, you must be knowing for the cylinder which has got a length L and radius R, what will be the value of its moment of inertia about this axis? That was given as m r square by 4 plus L square by 12. And let me tell you, you need to remember this formula. Deriving this, if you go ahead and derive this on the day of your examination, it will take your time. You need examination, you won't be having that much time to derive, and derivation would not be asked in your examination, you need examination. You will be required to know the basics, you will be required to remember the formula which you can directly use in your examination. So first thing we got I is equal to mr square by 4 plus L square by 12. This is the thing that we obtained for the moment of inertia. Now it says that, you see here, moment of inertia uniform horizontal cylinder of mass m about an axis passing through its edge and perpendicular to the axis of the cylinder. Passing through, now this is the axis of cylinder, perpendicular to the axis of cylinder is this. Passing through, this is the new axis about which we have to find the moment of inertia. Now how to comment on this? The distance that will be from this axis will be L by 2. This axis is passing through center of mass. This axis is passing through center of mass. Can we use theorem of parallel axis that is applicable for three-dimensional object? And if you know the moment of inertia about an axis passing through center of mass, then you can use the theorem of parallel axis to find out the moment of inertia about a new axis which is parallel to the axis passing through center of mass. So can we write moment of inertia I about new axis, that will be I about center of mass plus m and L by 2 whole square. This is what we can comment. So I about center of mass is what? M r square by 4 plus L square by 12. Now we can take m as common, this will be L square by 4. We got I moment of inertia about the new axis. This is what we have got. Now I about new axis, it is in terms of R and L. You see here it's given that perpendicular to the axis of cylinder when its length is 6 times its radius R. Length is 6 times its radius R, so we can write that L is equal to 6R. You have to only substitute L equals to 6R, and since the answer is given in terms of R, so we need to eliminate L. It's given in terms of R. What do you do? 6R you just substitute, you will get I new is equal to m r square by 4 L square by 12 plus L square by 4. We can simplify it. You will be getting this L square by 12. Can you write this as 3L square by 12? So 3 by 12 plus 1 by 12, you will be getting 4 by 12 L square. That will be 1 by 3 L square. L square by 3 you obtain. Now put L equals to 6R. You will be getting 36 R square by 3. So finally this will come out to be M R square by 4 plus L square by 3, that will give you 6R whole square, you will get 36 R square by 3. We got this. So you can see that we have reached the end of the board. Let me wipe the board. So what you do, take note till here. I will start from the other end. Take note till here. Okay, I believe that you would have taken down till the bottom end, and let me wrap this part. This is not required and we have used this part in our question. Let me rub this part and let us go ahead and let us just simplify this part we have reached m r square by 4 plus 36 r square by 3. This will be 12 r square. So let me write down this as I nu that is equal to m r square by 4 plus 12 r square. This is what we are going to obtain. So 12 r square plus this you are going to do. So you will be getting m. We can write this as 48 by 4. This can be written as 48 by 4. So 48 by 4 plus 1 by 4 we are getting 49 by 4. This will come out to be 49 by 4 r square. In very simple form, this will be 49 by 4 mr square. This is the new moment of inertia. I nu 49 by 4 mr square is what we have obtained. Let's check the option. A we had 39 by 4, that's incorrect, and D we had 49 by 4. So D will be the right answer for this one. I believe that you would understood how to solve such kind of question. It's a good question because the problem in this question was students don't remember the formula for moment of inertia of a cylinder whose axis is perpendicular to the axis of cylinder. The axis about which moment of inertia is to be evaluated, that is perpendicular to the axis of cylinder. In our regular class we have derived also, and I have advised you also, do remember this formula that I equals to m r square by 4 plus L square by 12. And yes, you can go ahead and also check the derivation also so that you may have the formula in your mind. Let's go ahead and let me rub this part. And very conveniently we have reached on to the result, how to evaluate. Questions can be asked in which directly you have to use the formula for this case of cylinder. To do remember the formula, that's required, and I believe that you are going to remember the formula quite conveniently. Let's go ahead with the next question of the day. Question number 10. Two wheels having radii in the ratio 1:3 are connected by a common belt. So we have got two wheels, their radii are different. If the smaller wheel is accelerated from rest at a rate 1.5 radian per square second, for 10 seconds find the velocity of bigger wheel. So we need to find out what is the angular velocity of the bigger wheel. A 5 radian per second, B 15 radian per second, C 45, and D none of these. Let me tell you the situation, what is happening. We have got two wheels whose radius, or let's say whose radii in the ratio 1:3 are connected by a common belt. This will be the scenario. This is one wheel, this is the other wheel. You must have seen such machines in which there's a conveyor belt attached to connect two wheels. Such machines would have seen, and the conveyor belt would be rotating as they rotate. Now, since they are connected by a conveyor belt, it's common belt, their linear velocity has to be same. So I am writing, if it's got linear velocity as v1, its linear velocity, let's say it's v2. So one thing that you can write that v1 should be equal to v2. Now you see that, but angular velocity may be different. Let's say angular velocity in this case it will be omega 1, in this case it is omega 2, and radius is also different, r1 and r2. Given that r1 and r2 are in the ratio 1:3, r1 and r2 are in the ratio 1:3, so we written down r1 by r2 equals to 1/3. Now you see that 1/3 we have used it. Now if the smaller wheel is accelerated from rest at a rate 1.5 radian per square second for 10 seconds, so can we comment on what angular velocity it's going to reach after 10 seconds? So if I write omega is equal to omega naught plus alpha t, omega naught is 0, alpha is 1.5, multiply with 10, you are going to get 15 radian per second. 15 radian per second is the angular velocity of the smaller wheel. Now you see that v1 equals to v2, this I have already told you why this will be. So you can write r1 omega 1 will be equal to r2 omega 2. From here you can write omega 2 will be r1 by r2 multiply with omega 1, and R1 by R2 is given as 1 by 3, omega 1 is 15, this comes out to be 5 radian per second. So the larger wheel, the wheel with the higher radius, the wheel with the bigger radius, that's its angular velocity will be 5 radian per second. So I am going to write here its angular velocity is 5 radian per second. Hope that that's clear to us how we have evaluated. If it is rotating with 15 radian per second, this has to rotate with only 5 radian per second. The same thing you can imagine in your bicycle also. I believe that you all would have rode a bicycle. You would have seen that there are the teeth arrangement given, the teeth and saw arrangement given. You have got two wheels, one at the rear part, one at the middle part. The radius of both the wheels are different. I'm not talking about the wheels of the cycle, I'm talking about the wheel that is actually connecting the chain of the bicycle. So now you would be knowing that the one that is the wheel that you are pedaling, that is of higher radius, that would be rotating with a less angular speed compared to the one which is at the rear end. This will be rotating at a higher angular speed. So that the linear velocity can be common for the tangential point, for the any point on the wheel, its linear velocity will be same. So the answer we got, that is 5 radian per second. Let's check. We are having A option as 5 radian per second. That is the right answer. I believe that you would have understood how to approach in such kind of question. Such kind of question can be asked in your NEET examination. All these 10 questions that we have discussed in this exercise, I believe that would be of great help to you all. But let me tell you, after the class also you have to practice on your own the unsolved question so that you can enhance your efficiency. That's required. You can enhance your understanding. And remember, solving unsolved question is the one thing that is most prominent, and that is what is required for a preparation. Just don't be satisfied with all this solved questions that we are discussing, all the solved example you see in your book. Also solved, unsolved, at least 30 to 40 question unsolved, or even 50 unsolved questions you need to solve in each chapter, so that you may understand what kind of questions can come, how differently a question can be framed based upon one concept. That will be good for understanding. I hope that you have enjoyed this class, you have learned a lot from this class. I'll meet you on the next class with some more concepts, some more questions. Till the time, thank you everyone. Wish you all the very best.